this book is not because I want to convince anybody that it's not fiction, but when I read this book, or the four of them in my late teens, it kind of broke something in me in a positive way. It connected with something that my dad used to say. The book itself is, well, it sounds like somebody who just wants to, it reads like the author just wanted to make fun of all the sci-fi out there and went overboard, making things as absurd as possible. But in reading that book, um, I had some insights connected to, and I'm sorry if this is out of sequence and it doesn't seem to make sense. I am in a process of trying to figure out what it all means and how to convey this, and it's a lifelong project, so please bear with me. Um, my dad used to tell me that the map is not the territory, which is a notion that I could kind of rationally understand, but it never meant anything to me. I didn't really grasp what it means. But when I read that book, I suddenly saw the internal logic and coherence in all the crazy things that he talks about. And it forced me to recognize that, or to experience before I could actually rationally, name anything. I had this profound experience that, yeah, I have this view of the world where it seems like this thing causes that thing, and people behave this way because of that reason. But that is just my way of perceiving things. That is a map that I created for myself. And if you have a different kind of view on things, if you zoom in on things, or if you zoom out on things, then that map, the heuristic, the representation of what you think you perceive, might need adjusting. So that was the first thing that the experience of a kind of myopia that I see this thing this way, and therefore it means this thing, and that's myopic. There is more to the story. A map is never complete. You never completely understand an entire system. So that was a beautifully funny, semi-processed experience. I couldn't express things. I just found it nice, and it opened something up in my experience, my perception. But I've never been the same since. Once I read that book, and that gets us to thing number two, is my dad, he was a systems analyst. So he would go into banks and hospitals and airlines, and he would go into the basement to analyze the software running on mainframes in the 70s and 80s. And so he was a real systems thinker. And he never talked to me about systems, not explicitly. But in him raising me, I learned how to apply this systems thinking lens. And it's something that I use very often in my work these days, where I try to understand why this combination of team members or this company working in this way or that way, that combination of team members, that company, two co-owners, that is all a system. Everything that you observe is a system and belongs to a different system and comprises smaller systems. And once you start looking at the world through a systemic lens, you suddenly realize that the map that you have, that's the explanation and definition of what this system looks like to you, is never complete. There's always more to learn, and there is a big obstacle to your ability to do things with people and in the world, inherent in assuming that your map is it. And obviously, this is a common knowledge. There is nothing too special about it. But what is special is the persistent tendency that we have to ignore data that comes in that says you need to update your map. So we see a thing, people behave a certain way. A government or a social movement acts in a certain manner. And you go, well, this means that, and therefore this is wrong or that needs changing. And then something new shows up, and it takes enormous effort on the individual, on the part of the individual, to accept that new data requires an update of your understanding, an update of the map. So that's what the Hitchhiker's Guide did to me when I first read it. It forced me to see that you cannot trust your own maps, that because you as a human being, you will always fill in the blanks and assign meaning and attribute volition to people's behavior. And okay, let's keep it to myself. I always end up filling in blanks in ways that suit my already existing opinion, my definition of the map. Well, they behave like this, and therefore that confirms that my map is right. And it is so difficult to be open to the new data, the new information, the new insights that come in and integrate them into your map. And that then is really thing number 3, that, yeah, The Hitchhiker's Guide might be fiction, but what it taught me is that in reality, we all constantly create our own fictions. And then we go, well, this is real. This is the way things are. And a lot of the problems in society and in relationships come from that default automatic assumption that the way we understand something, the way we perceive or interpret something, well, that's the way it is. And therefore, now I need to berate you, or I need to consider you a guilty party because that fits with my map and my system. And so I'm living an experience where in my early teens, my dad told me about the map and the territory. And then I read that book and something snapped. And yeah, a funny story is that there's a book by Robert Heinlein, Stranger in a Strange Land, which is about some alien who's very spiritual. And it's a very beautiful story. I read it around the same time. And when I read it, it blew my mind. It was like, how can things work like this? How can there be philosophy and ethics that this is so beautiful? It was a deeply moving experience to read that book. Then I somehow ended up in a monastery. I spent 12 years there, 6 years as an ordained monk, and I went through all kinds of spiritual training and experiences. And I read the book again, Stranger in a Strange Land. And I thought, yeah, it's nice. It's a nice story. And it didn't affect me. It had no similar kind of impact on me as it did the first time, because I'd lived through so many things that were described in that book. But every time I go back to reading The Hitchhiker's Guide, there is the same kind of revelation experience going on in my psyche, my emotions, that, I have still not figured out how to trust. I still haven't figured out how to call into question my own systems. I still want to consider everything, every map, every opinion as the truth, because I'm smart and I understand things and I'm a systems thinker. So if I think this thing means this thing, well, that's the way it is. And that's why I keep going back to the guide, because it forces me to recognize that, no, things are not the way you think they are. And that is so wholesome. And it helps me become more comfortable with ambiguity and ambivalence. And that, for me, is a real superpower, to live in a space where certainty is not guaranteed. So let's see if I can tie that in with thing number 4, where my abbot used to always say, mind can make any connection. And, your early 20s novice monk, and you're trying to be the best you can, and you have your logic for why you do things this way, and you react to people in that way. And for yourself, you can logic yourself out of any situation. You can justify, rationalize, you can be reasonable, and it all makes sense. But if you really look at how your thought process works, you have to admit at some point that you're making things up. You're making connections between things that only serve you and your pre-chosen bias and opinion of how things are. So this is an ongoing process that I'm trying to figure out, and it's taken me 30 years, and I'm not done yet, to figure out where is the lack of logic and where is the self-serving bias in how I think about things and look at things. So to make this a little bit more concrete and less abstract, there's a story in thing number 5, and it's the shortest story in the world. Baby shoes for sale, never worn. I challenge anybody to write a story that is shorter. Now, that story is a system in itself. It is a map of a sequence of events. Now, you read that story, and you automatically start filling in blanks. For one person, it may mean that, oh, this is probably parents who may have perished in a war. For somebody else, they might go like, oh, yeah, that reminds me of that time that my niece had a stillborn baby. And so the little six-word story gets uh, um, translated, interpreted into something that you already know, me, or believe, or have an opinion about. It connects to an existing map. But you can take those 6 words and expand it into 1,000 different kinds of stories. There can be an untold number of maps behind those 6 words. And the big problem and frustration that I have in my life, and that I use books and meetings with people such as Andy to try and overcome this, is to slowly, gradually become more comfortable with ambivalence and ambiguity and simply not knowing what things mean. And the more comfortable I get with that, the things better get, the more things get better. And the more at ease I become with living. And with being myself, really, which is a challenge in its own right. So that's basically what I hope somebody will find useful, that, yeah, your opinions are valid, but what if there's more to the story? What would happen to your life if you would be more willing, more rapidly able to update your maps based on what comes into the data set, what new revelations or insights need to be brought in so that you continuously improve the resolution and the definition and the accuracy of the maps that you have of the things that happen in your life.
Thanks so much, Martin. That was wonderful. Thanks so much. I'm really trying to join the dots. We had a really interesting conversation about like stories like Hitchikers, Matrix, even like Wizard of Oz. They expose the
Mhm.
system that you're living
Yeah,
in, which I think is exactly what Michaela did very elegantly today.
yeah,
Is exposing the system that we're living in, like
yeah.
technologies like AI are a bit more nefarious in that way, and it's a little bit more hidden. It's harder to see. Um, I think going back to Joe's talk as well, it's really interesting for me that the sort of homogenous experiences. I mean, we optimize for like yeah, we optimize our experiences so that they're not shocking every day and don't drag us out of our system. But I think, in a sense, that is required to help us like do that constant work of exposing the systems that we live in. We just get lazy otherwise. Anyway, I've made an attempt. As you said, the brain will. What was the quote? Sorry. Mind can make any connection.
Mhm.
And for me, yeah, 3 very disparate books have made a connection for me. Or Michaela, what are your reflections on today?
I think it shows that there's definitely hope out there, and how we put it together. You say we're still building the map. We can still make changes. We all work together, and it's focusing on what matters. So it's building those relationships, taking those moments, focusing on things that should be key or power moments, and then building that map to make sure it reflects the society we want to live in.
Wow. Yeah. Let's
I've
build
had
some
coffee.
maps. We can be in control of these maps, right? We can map this, I think. What tools do we use? Our hearts.
Build for those toddlers.
100%. Joe, you're always find 5 things. Even though your talk was maybe 30 minutes ago, maybe another another wibbly wobbly time thing, but it felt quite long ago now. The preceding talks affected how you are thinking about your talk.
Yeah, I was just sort of making some notes there, just in terms of between Martin and Laura, is like, for me the sort of thread of like Martin talking about confirmation bias and like what are the stories that we tell ourselves. And I suppose you can pop that like anyway, that I guess it's there are, as Martin said, there's thousands of different ways of doing it. And so yeah, what stories are we telling ourselves? But and in my mind it connects with Michaela, sort of our bias is already inherently in our society. Now AI is like this imperfect mirror that reflects back to us, and then I guess it's sort of it's emphasized even further. But yeah, I think it really does, like, okay, what are our biases and what do we want to create more of, is my sort of loose thread between the 3 of us, is that we are in control in a certain way. And obviously I believe in relentless optimism on it. But yeah, I think it's very much taking what the facts are there. That's a great warning shot. And then, okay, so what are we going to do about it? And what stories can we tell? Yeah, without, what stories can we tell to change this system, because it's not right. It's not, we don't like it. Yeah, I don't know. So many little fireworks going off for me.
Yeah.
So yeah.
It's where my brain is. I think that's what I love about these mornings. Makes lots of interesting new connections for me. Believe it or not, we're just past 9, past our hour already. I've had a wonderful time. I'm so glad. I'm so honoured to share this space with such wonderful, smart, caring people. So thanks everyone for joining this morning. A virtual round of applause for our speakers. I really enjoyed all 3 talks this morning. Joe, Michaela and Martin, thank you. Remind us of your Saturday challenge, Joe. Well, Jim's embraced the popsicles for a Saturday surprise. Okay, folks, well, enjoy the rest of your Fridays, enjoy your Saturday surprise, and thanks again. See you later.
Thank you all.
Thanks so much, Andy.
Bye, everyone.